You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 127. Today, I've invited a guest to share how to master the art of sales. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Hey, are you a thought leader, creative entrepreneur, or change maker and want to magnify your impact, boost influence while creating a financial abundance? Stay tuned for today's inspiring episode with your host, Melanie Benson.
Hello there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson here, profit amplifier to expertpreneurs and service business owners. I'm psyched for today's episode. I can't wait to introduce you to this friend of mine who I think is one of the hottest sales mentors out there right now. She's taken some really interesting experiences with Shark Tank and trying to get funding for her own brick and mortar business, and then radically pivoted. And some people might actually say it was a failure, but I love to see how she pivoted, tapped into perseverance, and recalibrated to create one of the most successful podcasts, one of the most successful sales consulting businesses. There's so much to learn from her. Stay tuned. But I want to talk for a minute first about what it takes to pivot courageously, what it takes to do something like what Michelle did. It starts with being willing to have a bold mindset, being so committed to your success, being so committed to your bigger why that you won't allow failed attempts to define you. You won't let fear shape your decisions, but yet you'll really look at each step you take with a bold mindset. And I find that sometimes you just need a little help to kind of like reboot your mindset, to reconnect with that fearlessness inside. We all have it, but sometimes we let the world around us kind of get us down. And that's one of the reasons why I created the Own Your Bold free 5-part training. And each step of the Own Your Bold training will take you through how to create big, bold leaps in your business to get to that next level in a way that's more sustainable and feels so much more fun. So I want to gift this to you at ownyourboldchallenge.com. You can pick up this 5-part training. It'll take you through each of the 5 steps. And some of these steps may be missing. I'll talk to you about how to really use leverage properly so you can grow beyond just you, how to break free of the financial limits that may have caused you to maybe under-earn what you thought you were going to earn, and how to tap into the right authority platform so you stand out in your marketplace instead of blending in. Plus, I'll take you deep into a bold mindset training that will help you really have the courage and the confidence to take big leaps. But most importantly, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's all about how to prioritize the right opportunities at the right time. So grab your free training now at ownyourboldchallenge.com. Now, I want to introduce you to Michelle. Well, I'm super jazzed for today's guest. I have invited her to come and talk about one of my favorite subjects, but also a subject that people get really overwhelmed and a little freaked out by, and that's sales and how to turn sales into, let's even just call it your new best friend. So let me introduce you to my friend, Michelle Weinstein. She's a sales strategist, entrepreneur, and innovator. She has over 20 years of sales experience selling everything from multi-million-dollar homes to paleo meatballs. Her achievements include raising over $1 million for her last company, landing contracts with major retailers such as Costco and the Vitamin Shop, and pitching her way right onto ABC's Shark Tank. She's now the founder of The Pitch Queen and the host of 2 really successful podcasts, Success Unfiltered and the Abundant Accountant podcast, where she helps small business owners and entrepreneurs learn to love selling, make a bigger impact in the world, and skyrocket their top-line revenue in the process. Michelle, I'm so glad you're joining me today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. We're finally doing this. So
I know, yay! 2 busy girl bosses finally finding the right time.
Right.
Well, and I got to say a big shout out to you I haven't been listening to Abundant Accountant, but I do listen to Success Unfiltered. It's one of my favorite podcasts, and I love that you're always
Oh,
conquering those sales fears and the resistance, and you feature such great people. So I want to encourage everyone listening in, go check it out. I think it might be your next hot podcast to listen to.
what are the most valuable lessons you've learned so far listening to the podcast?
Well, there's a lot. Some of my
Three.
favorite ones are the ones where you talk to people about their journey from like a failed process, like the lady that was the
Uh-huh.
towel lady that pitched herself to Shark
Oh,
Tank,
yes,
and
yes.
then
Show
how
no
she,
towels.
yeah, and she had to regroup from that. I loved the millennial that you did with the, I think it was like the organic or raw smoothie place that she tried to open it up in one of the coldest parts of the U.S. and realized all the, the
Yes,
skeletons.
up in Washington.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I've really loved your Saturday bonus ones you do too. And so, if you start listening into her podcast like I do, you'll know she does a lot of different things on her podcast. But those conversations you have with your friend that does the selling training,
Ross Jeffrey.
yeah,
He's
you're
he's
basically,
my work husband. Yeah.
ah, well,
He is
see,
a
you rock
sales
it.
genius guru, and some of those episodes are amazing if you ever want to get super technical. I always talk to him about how technical he gets in the sales, and I like to try to keep it a little bit simpler for you.
Well, you guys make a good team. So anyway, I think it's one of the best podcasts out there for people like us. So check it out, friends. Check it out.
Well, thank you.
So before we jump into this stuff around sales, there's just some great mindset pieces,
Mhm.
strategy, and you have so many great resources here. But I just want to kind of go into this Shark Tank thing for a minute because I think people watch Shark Tank and they see, the magic happening and people pitching and getting on or not. And, like it's a very catchy show, but I'm curious, like what was Shark Tank like for you and what was the biggest takeaway you had from that experience?
Shark Tank for me was the best experience that I've had on my entrepreneurial journey. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just remember when the show started and I watched season 1, season 2. I was taking notes, because I was at the time raising money for my last company. I said, I can do this. I can be on this show. And I applied, online. I never went to one of those in-person auditions, but when they reached back out and I went through the whole process, it's almost like next level for college. I think college teaches you how to complete something, right? And during the Shark Tank whole experience, it not only shows you how to complete something, but you really learn how to dot every I, cross every T. Like you cannot miss a beat. If you miss a beat, there's someone right in back of you waiting for you to screw up. So I did season 4. There were 30,000 applicants. Only 130 of us pitched. And, my biggest takeaway from that whole experience was if you put your mind to something, it'll happen. And I did a vision board and I said, I'm going to be selected for season 4. And like every single thing throughout the journey and process happened. And it just made you so much stronger as an entrepreneur. It got you out of your comfort zone. I recently did a leadership training where they gave you stretches, and stretches meant where you got put outside of your comfort zone to see how you would react and your level of emotional intelligence. Well, now that I did that recently, I realized that when I did Shark Tank, that's exactly what they put you through. They stretch you in every single direction. It's almost like Gumby. When I went to Disneyland when I was a kid, or Disney World or Epcot Center, I can't remember which one. They had this green flexible creature, and his name is Gumby. And I literally think that Shark Tank is like Gumby. It's how far can you stretch to almost your breaking point. And I think as an entrepreneur, each of you listening, that's really what you want to strive for, every day, every month. Like, what are you going to do today to put you outside of that comfort zone to make you that much stronger in order to achieve whatever dreams that you have? And now, after that experience, am that much stronger. I mean, even this leadership class, like all the stretches, I was like, I've kind of done something like this already. But it was good to be put in that position again because, now I know there's a leadership training out there that actually teaches people this. So if you're not going to go on Shark Tank, highly recommend some sort of emotional intelligence training to get your mind right, because your mindset as an entrepreneur is everything. That's what's going to set you apart from the other person who's in your same niche, same industry. Even when I started this podcast, Success Unfiltered, when I first started, so many people said, Michelle, what are you doing? There's so many podcasts. Why is yours going to be different? Who's going to listen to you? You don't know how to interview. Like, I got every naysayer on the planet telling me what I didn't know, what I wasn't going to be able to accomplish, and what I couldn't do. And, I just did it anyway. And I don't listen to any of that. And there's a point where you build up so much emotional intelligence and physical strength that your confidence is so great that it doesn't really matter what someone tells you. It's not going to derail you in any way. So that's really a long answer to your question about what Shark Tank and what my biggest takeaway was from it.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of stretching yourself. I think leaders are actually they're, if you can expand during the stressful times and when things are really intense, you can accomplish anything. Right. I think we think somehow it's supposed to be easy and you're supposed to have this graceful path unfold. No. Right. And I know your story because we're connected through a couple different places. And I know that part of what happened for you is you eventually realized that, the business you were getting funding for was not going to be where you went. And so you became this really powerful sales coach, mentor, consultant. And when was the point you knew that you were going to create this new direction?
This new direction? Well, it's a great question. So I closed a company that I had for, almost 9 years in March 27th of 2017. I don't think I'll ever forget that date. It's almost like a death of a family member, I feel like. And I would have probably said I started creating my plan B about a year prior. I knew that if I didn't get about an $8 million round of funding to really keep going with that type of company was going to be very difficult. And my investors were already tapped out. So I already went to my current investors and asked them for more money as another round. But in order to get from where we were to significant increase in volume, it was a food manufacturing company, I would need 8 million. And a lot of other companies were getting funded like Blue Apron and Freshly, but they were newer in the space. And there was a handful of us, about 10 companies that started, at the time, 7-8 years ago. Well, to VC funding, you're kind of old school and old news and you weren't the new hot thing anymore. So I knew about a year and I created my plan B ideas and said, well, if this doesn't go as I want it to, what am I going to do? Because I know one thing is I wasn't going to probably go get a job. I think once you are working for yourself and I'm sure a lot of you listening love the freedom, love the flexibility, love that everything is in your control. And if you screw up or don't make any money, it's your fault. It's no one else's fault. And I knew about a year prior that I needed to start thinking about what was that next step for me. What was going to be my plan B, my plan C, my plan D. So I had a few different plans in place and I didn't really know what direction, but I did know I have so many lessons learned that if I had a podcast that taught me everything that I had been through for the 8-9 years that I had my company, that would help other people because I didn't have that. It's not like you can go to Barnes and Nobles and get a book and say, how do you deal with your COO who's going to bring on staff and employees when you're out of town with no paperwork and no documentation and just bring people on, and put you at that kind of risk. So there were a multitude of lessons learned. And I said, how can I take this and share it with the masses? And that's really what sparked the idea for Success Unfiltered. And I said, you know what? In addition to my stories, let me interview some other really successful entrepreneurs doing, 8 figures, like companies 10 million and up, 50 million and up. And what was so interesting is like, you know what? Each of us is not alone. anyone who has created something extraordinary, had some massive success, also had a massive failure, dealt with rejections and all these stories that none of us talk about, right? You see success and everyone talks about that, but how come no one really talks about the failure, how you got out of it? What did you do to overcome it to get to now where you're at? And so that's why I started this raw version of talking about these stories that, you know, my mom and I would talk about, or my best friend and I, but not everyone knew. If everyone knew, everyone would probably not buy my food. And the perception was that my company was doing really well on the outside, when really on the inside, it wasn't the truth. And I tell you, there are so many companies the same way. And the founders, each of you listening, if you own your company, you deal with the same thing. You're like trapped in your little island. I mean, for almost 2 to 3 weeks, when we decided we had to close the company, I had to pretend and front and fake that everything was hunky-dory and okay. But do you know how many founders have to do that before you go close the doors? You can't just say, oh, hey, everybody, we're going to be closing our doors in about 2 weeks. Can you keep up your hard work? It's not going to work that way. And that's really when I came up with my, you know, plan B. And that's why I'm doing what I do. And it's a resource completely free for entrepreneurs around the world. And this information is not going to go, you know, quote unquote stale, right? It's always going to be relevant. And that's really why I started it. And I've even learned so many lessons. I learned so many things that I could have done differently. And I think each of you making mistakes, that's really amazing, because you learn from your mistakes and that you'll never do it again. But also learning from others so you can save time, you can save money, because some of my mistakes cost upwards of a few $100,000, along with some of the people I've interviewed. So
yeah, I've made that $100,000 mistake too.
Right?
I think it's kind of like part of the investment in your success. I like to consider it like part of your master's degree,
right?
Is you've got to invest in a learning. And so for most of us, it's an epic failure.
It is. It definitely is an epic failure. And it definitely, you know, it's an opportunity to grow, but how can each person listening also grow? Why do we need to keep it a secret? Because why? It's embarrassing, right? For the first month, I couldn't believe I have to talk about the fact that I had this failed business. I ended up with $100,000 in credit card debt in my name. It was in the company's name, but it was under my social, which means I'm responsible for it. So do I file bankruptcy, or do I just figure out a way how to pay it off? You know, and I was able to pay off that debt in about 14 months. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with the fact that all of your investors, you know, we lost probably upwards, I call my MBA program a $2 million MBA program. So, you know, amongst all the convertible notes and the equity, but, you know, after interviewing a lot of people, there's other people that lost 10, 20, $30 million. And it's really hard to, you know, sometimes bounce back from those things. But hey, a true accredited investor, they're investing in 10 businesses in hopes one makes it, even though each of us doesn't start a business saying, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to put all my energy and all my time and my blood, sweat, and tears in this company, and I hope it doesn't work out. No, none of us do that. We're always, you know, we swing for the fences and we go big. But the reality is that only one business out of 10 is really maybe going to make it, or two. And all I know is that deep down, I did everything and anything I could, that I can look at any investor and say, I tried everything. I did everything I physically, possibly, mentally could. It just, you know, timing is off when you're too early in a space. There's so many variables. But through the podcast, it was very therapeutic for me to talk about it. And I just wish and hope that each of you will share and talk about those stories, because not only for your emotional sense and state, but for to give a gift to other people.
Yeah. It's almost like there's this protection device we have where we feel like we have to keep these dirty secrets like hidden, but yet it's one of the most common parts of entrepreneurship. And I think the more we take the stigma out of it, the more comfortable people are. And I just really want to acknowledge you for being courageous enough to share your story. And, you know, I know it's been hard for me to share my story at times, but like the more we do it, the more we take the stigma out and the more we normalize, like that's just
Right.
part of the process. We're not these golden girls who, had a mistake-free journey. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love the work you're doing is you also take that same philosophy and you apply it to the world of selling.
Yes.
And selling, I believe it's an art, but it's also a skill. And it's a skill that we can all learn. But so many people have these intense fears about it, and they have all of this resistance. And, I see clients of mine make up these stories about what they're good at or not good at. And it's like these blocks come up about doing the very thing that's the lifeblood of their business. And I guess
Right.
I'm curious in your journey, like, why do you think people have this intense fear about the sales process?
Well, it all stems to their sales beliefs, right? So if you think about like what is a belief, we've lived for 20, 30, 40, 50 some years, right? However old you are. And it's just this like level of certainty that something might be true or is true. And it's just what we think, and it's just ingrained in us, right? For me, this is my favorite example. You go to the mall and you have the kiosks in California, at least, in between all the stores in the middle of the mall, and they're either trying to curl your hair or give you samples, and the automatic response is no thanks, and you just keep it moving, right? And it's really just what I call our filter in which we view the things, and then we attach a meaning to it. So I attach a meaning to these kiosks in stop annoying me. I'm going to like Victoria's Secret. I didn't come here to get my hair twirled, and just let me be. But every single experience, if you went and bought a car, if you had a terrible experience buying a house, all of that has created your beliefs around it. And so but the benefit is, and the great thing is all these beliefs are shiftable. You can change it. I work specifically with accountants who have had zero sales experience, never thought they had to sell a day in their life when owning their own firms. They're all entrepreneurs and they all own their own CPA and accounting firms. But, their beliefs are, I answer all my clients' questions, or I'm just not a salesperson. I'm not good at it. People only buy based on price, so I can't charge anymore. Or they say, I'm just lucky to have clients. I can't be picky about who I work with. Or they say a lot of times for my accountants, I'm in the business of helping people. I'm not here to make a fortune. And I think a lot of personal trainers and healers and other people, so you have all these like beliefs about whatever it is. And really, here's the truth about everything sales related. It's actually your moral imperative. And when I share a different view, and I'm just using my accountants as an example so you can understand it, and you don't share your knowledge and your wisdom with a client, and then they end up paying an extra $40,000, $50,000 to the IRS because you didn't think you were a good salesperson, right? It doesn't work that way. And really, people do end up buying based on, value. They buy off feelings, and they don't just buy off price alone. But again, a lot of this is just coming from different mindsets. There's the scarcity mindset, right? I'll never earn that much. Oh, I'll never make over 100,000 a year. And if those are the ways you think, then that's what you're going to attract. And what I have learned is that you can actually love selling and never have to feel like you're pushy, sleazy, all that other stuff. And selling is literally just sharing what you do with someone in a way that they are able to solve some sort of problem. So the people in the mall, they are just a little annoying in a way to try to curl my hair because they think I want to curl my hair. It's just a different sales process, right? A service-based business, a product-based business, a little kiosk business in the mall. It's all a form of sales, but there's different nuances in between the different forms of selling.
That's good distinctions. And I love your definition. It was exactly what I think. It was like when you take the word selling out and you realize you're literally just having a conversation with someone who needs what you do.
Right.
And your job is just to figure out if you're the right person to deliver that for them, right? Or to give them that product. It's like This is not about making people do something they don't want to do. I think that's why a lot of people have fears. They have this, these old stories and filters, as you call them, where someone pressured them to do something that they, on some level, felt like they didn't want to do. Like,
Right.
It's not really what sales is supposed to be.
No. And also, if you think about it, another sort of definition of sales, or if you think about what is that journey, right? If you remove the word sale, when you're sitting with a client, you're basically sharing with them what you do to solve a problem, and that you're guiding them through a conversation to make some sort of decision that they feel good about, right? Because they're going to decide to work with you. They're going to decide to buy your service, product, whatever it is, but they need to feel good about it. So really the whole process from start to finish is just a process of having them just feel good about the decision that they make.
Totally. I love it. Let's talk about what that sales conversation is like. I think you call it having a powerful sales conversation. So what is a powerful sales conversation?
I can give us a little overview today. We would be here for 8 hours if I gave you the full sales conversation. But if you can remember me, the pitch queen, then you'll remember a really simple 5-step process for a really great sales conversation. And it should help you take action today and actually get some sort of results, because maybe one of the steps you're not even doing. So if you can just remember pitch queen, then you'll remember it, because I made it sort of simple so you can remember the P, the I, the T, the C, and the H. So the number one thing of a sales conversation is understanding the root cause of a problem. So P is, how do you problem solve? What is the client's immediate problem? What are they looking for? What's the ultimate reason they actually reached out to you? Or why is the buyer at the store looking at your product? What problem are you here to solve? Right? So understanding the problem you solve, and then also understanding and asking really great questions to your prospects sitting in front of you to get them to understand the problem they have. So it goes both ways, but that is the root of any sales conversation. You're literally, and I think it's also for each of you that has a company, why you started your company. You're here to solve a problem. So that's the number one point. The second one of the I is that the sales conversation has nothing to do with you. It's how do you become detached from the outcome of whatever happens with this client, buyer, investor, whatever it may be, and that you're fully immersed in the other person the whole time. And that any sales related conversation literally has nothing to do with you, how you're going to pay your rent next month, how you're going to make payroll. And a lot of times as founders, business owners, that's the things we think about, right? And then if a client doesn't engage with us, doesn't enroll with us, the buyer doesn't bring in our products to Costco for whatever reason, we think, well, how am I going to make payroll now? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my fixed overhead? And what we want to do and slowly learn, and it's literally just practicing and being mindful, is that this isn't about you. There's many reasons people end up not buying, but really the most important thing you can do for your success as it relates to increasing revenue is being detached from having this whole thing be about you. So that would be the I in the shortest explanation. T for the pitch queen, right? So we have the P, the I, the T now, is talking less. And I know I've done a lot of the talking here today. However, I use the 80-20 principle in everything. If you haven't read that book, it's a great book. But the 80-20 principle is that when you're sitting in a meeting, if you're sitting with a client, if you're pitching to an investor, the better the questions that you come up with, the more that you're going to get the other person talking. And the 80-20 rule is that you talk 20% of the time and you listen 80% of the time. And if you can just do that one little small thing, everything will shift in your business. If it's getting into more shelves and working with buyers, if it's raising more money, it's literally about being the best listener that you can be. Because when building the connection with people want to be heard. And I'm sure you've heard this. Most people don't feel heard. So talking less and having the opportunity to listen a lot more and letting people talk, because trust me, people love to talk. So let's let them. That's another crucial one. So T is talking less. The next one is C, and C is buying cues. So cues, CUES. And I can't tell you how many times that I have worked with so many of my accountants in my online class that I have for them and really creating a sales process that they send out proposals and then just hope that their clients are going to their future clients are just going to email them back when they're ready. They never ask for the sale. They never ask for the investment. They never ask, when would you like to place a purchase order for my products to get into Costco? Like, you actually have to ask for the sale. And there's just so many opportunities that are missed because we don't ask. So it's really listening for those buying cues. I go into depth in, if you want to get more of this, at sellwithoutsleaves.com, but I go into a lot more depth about verbal and nonverbal buying cues that could help you determine when a client is actually sharing buying signals with you. And if they are, then just ask to work with them. So, and asking is kind of the next thing for the H, which is hit the ask button. We do all this work up front. We do all this follow up. And then the client's finally giving you some buying cues, right? And they're saying, a few that you could maybe hear is like, so what would be the next steps? If someone asks you what's the next steps, you ask for a credit card, well, my fee is whatever, X number of dollars. What's the form of payment you want to use? Visa or MasterCard? It's like, you really just need to ask, and people want to buy. People don't want to be sold, but people want to buy. So if you allow them the opportunity to buy by asking if they want to work with you, if they want to buy your product, whatever it may be, then let's let them. And I have a little, maybe this analogy will make sense and resonate with you. I had a birthday a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to get a bunch of girlfriends together and go out downtown and go to dinner. But if I don't ask my girlfriends to come to dinner, then how is anyone going to come to my birthday party if I don't invite them? And I literally, if you can just think about your birthday party, or you can think about your family gathering or holiday parties or whatever it is, a sales process isn't any different. You just have to invite people to come to your party. And so when you ask for the investment, you ask for the sale, you ask for the buyer to bring in your products and ask for that PO, you're literally, if you can put your mind, I'm just inviting them to my party. And then that is the same process to a sale. It's literally that simple. And I think about that a lot. Like, okay, I'm just going to invite this client into my party. I have an accounting party every Monday, and if you want to join me, I am here.
I love it. I love the birthday analogy, by the way.
Yeah, the birthday analogy might resonate, or the holiday party, because if you can think about your product or your service that you're selling, you don't have to sell it. You just need to invite people into your party and be a part of what you're doing and share it with them and allow them to make a really great decision that they feel good about. So that's that. If you want to get more in depth, again, it's sellwithoutsleaves.com.
Perfect. Yeah. And I love that resource. It's a great resource. And I think that's what we all want, right? We don't want to feel sleazy when we're selling. We want to feel like it's natural and
Yeah.
We're in our integrity. So great resource there.
Yeah.
I want to move into this idea of objections.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen you post a lot of stuff about this, and you're doing great mindset shifts here, some great techniques.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think this is where a lot of people get stuck too, right? It's like, oh, they stop asking for the sale, or they're like, I don't want to be pushy or sleazy.
Right.
And like, so when objections start coming up, what's your advice to the person who's doing the selling?
Objections are a tricky and very complex subject. But I would say, if you can remember a few things, this will help you. An objection is just someone's belief. It's like an automatic response to a belief that they had before, right? So if you think about what we were talking about in the beginning, we all had these beliefs, either from the mall, people trying to curl your hair, give you samples of some perfume, or from buying a car, or from a horrible house transaction, right? You've all had this horrible experience. So an objection is just an automatic response to some sort of belief. And if you can remember that, and then the other thing is that what we don't want to do is be defensive and get into arguments. That is the number one thing. If you can just acknowledge their objection, tell them you completely understand, the biggest objections are on price, that they want to think about it. Some of you might hear that, oh, I want to talk to my significant other. Or a buyer might say, your competitors coming in at 10 cents less a unit. All of those, if you can just really use the 80-20 rule, listen a lot, not be defensive, and really come from a place that, oh, they're just having an automatic response to a previous belief that they had. You'll be able to just have a really casual, good conversation with someone where they'll be able to make a good decision, because that's, again, what we're helping them. We are helping them guide through the process of making a really great decision that they feel good about.
And I would like to add, don't take it personally.
Yes. Don't take it personally. But that goes back to the pitch queen system, right?
Yes.
It's not about you. So a lot of times when we hear an objection, we automatically think it's about us. This whole sales process, whatever you're doing to grow your top line revenue, has nothing to do with you, right? The whole client prospecting, buyer prospecting, investor prospecting, the whole process, the objection handling, it has nothing to do with you. Now, you are inviting them to your party, but if they don't want to be at your party, then that's okay. And how do you learn how to detach from that? So yeah, you're 100% right on, spot on.
Sometimes it's just timing, right? Like I've had people that said no because they weren't ready, or they just didn't really believe that they could take full advantage of it. But 6 months later, they were perfectly ready.
Right.
And that has, again, I love that it's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And do we really want somebody to be, getting into our process with us if they're not going to use it, and they're not going to do with it? Yeah. So, I'm also just curious, do you notice that there's signs that somebody may need to work on these skill of selling? Because I think sometimes people are a little, they don't really understand that the problem they're having with boosting sales in their business has to do with their ability to sell, right? Like they're making it all these other things that are not really the core problem.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, anyone can learn this. And I think it's just a matter of you, tuning into like a Success Unfiltered podcast and doing and reading maybe a couple books on the topic, because selling is your lifeline to your business. If you don't have top line revenue, you have a hobby. So if you're a true entrepreneur and you're truly growing a business, you've signed up for a 24/7 sales career, and that's okay, because I have taught a lot of people how to enjoy it, how to love it, and how to never come from a place of being pushy, being sleazy, and all of that. And that you can actually feel really good about it and enjoy it, because this is the part that will change your whole life, because your revenue is what creates money to pay rent, what creates jobs in your business for your employees. It creates livelihoods for so many people, right? If you have an employee with a job, they have a family, they have kids. Your revenue and your top line is the most important part in your whole business. So if you're not cut out for that or willing to attempt, then maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you. You can work at a company because they have salespeople there that bring in the revenue, so you can do the job part. But if you're an entrepreneur, you will be raising money. You will be pitching products to buyers if you have a product, or if you're in a service-based business, you'll have a lot of enrollment conversations. And again, selling is just serving your clients and being able to do the work that you truly love. So if you're like me, and I love teaching accountants how to create sales processes and procedures in their firms because they've never done it before, I love my enrollment conversations. This is an opportunity for me to show them what's possible what's something different that they can create in their firm, in their life, in their business that's going to change, because what was going on wasn't working. And, I've got resources. There's plenty of resources online. If you just type in, how do I learn how to sell on Google, I'm sure you'll find a ton. But it's the livelihood of your business. And you signed up for a 24/7 sales career, and I'm just here to remind you, and you can love it. I promise. I've had accountants tell me, Michelle, this is amazing. I never knew that I had this skill set. And, it was just it's the skill set's been there. It's just been dormant, because if you love what you do, I can wake it up. Yeah, I can definitely wake it up if you love what you do. Now, if you don't love what you do, that's a different story. But if you are truly loving and passionate about what you do every day, and you've got an amazing service or product that is changing people's lives, this is an opportunity for you to do that at a larger scale, which is why I think each of you is an entrepreneur. So I'll leave it with that.
I love that. I love that. And I'll just share on a personal note. When I started coaching and building my business, I was terrified of the idea of selling. And so I was one of those people that fell in love with it because I realized it had nothing to do with selling. It just had to do with connecting, just, exploring what the real problems were, and could I help them solve that problem? Is that something that I was passionate about for them? And then we just talk about what it's like to work together. And, it works about 70 to 80% of the time when I have a conversation with someone. Shifting my mindset about it is the only thing that had to shift. So I want to really encourage you as you're listening in, grab a pen, or if you're in front of your computer, write down sellwithoutsleaze.com. Pop over there and grab this resource from Michelle. It's really helpful. And all of Michelle's stuff is I love how you infuse your personality into everything. It's such a fun way of approaching selling.
I don't make it boring. I can promise you that. You should be slightly entertained.
You are not boring. You are not boring.
Yeah.
Especially if you follow her on Instagram, you know this.
Yeah, on my Instagram, it's the Pitch Queen, and you get to learn all the funny, weird things about me. But I truly do love what I do, and if I can help accountants who are super introverted and never thought they could ever do this, I just finished a class, and they're like, Michelle, this is amazing! I can't believe it. My firm has grown this much. I got rid of all the clients I hated. I feel confident in every conversation. I actually have a process. I never have to wing it. Like, you can do that too. And all my resources online are completely free. I am coming up with one course. It's how to think and act like an 8-figure entrepreneur. So that is coming out soon. But if you get Sell Without Sleaze, you'll get an email about it when I release it. But it's the mindset of how the companies and founders that are doing 10 million and up think. So
love that.
It's going to be it's going to be great. But again, everything right now is free. Again, you'll get on my email list if you go to sellwithoutsleaze.com. It is completely free. I just ask for your email so I can keep in touch with you.
There you go. Well, I like to wrap up our episodes by asking my guest about bold moves. So I know you've been in business in different fashions for a while. What would you say is the boldest thing you've done so far that had the greatest payoff?
The boldest thing I did was close my company. That's probably the biggest thing. That was the boldest move that has had the highest payoff. And I share that because it was not only it was the boldest move because it wasn't the move I wanted to make. I was sort of, I didn't really have a choice, but it was a bold move because I went into it like, okay, I'm going to close the company and I'm going to talk about it, because there's so many people that don't want to talk about how they had to close their company. And I've had a few shows on Success Unfiltered talking about this, and I plan to have more when more people are open to talking about it. I have reached out to founders who have lost 40, 50, 60 million in investment money who are still not ready to talk about how they had to close their company. And that was a bold move that had the biggest payoff. And the payoff was if you can imagine, like my family lives in Seattle, and there's Mount Rainier there. And every time I fly into Seattle, I imagine like this big boulder that I had to push up Mount Rainier. And that was about 9 years of my life. And I think there's a time where you're like on the hamster wheel and you keep running, or you're pushing this boulder up a mountain and it's so heavy that you literally feel it's going to roll right over you and flatten you out like a pancake. That's how I felt for almost 9 years. Or not 9, but 9 minus a couple. Few months were always good here and there. We had some really great, amazing opportunities. And yeah, I had a bunch of successes. But if you look at the full picture, the payoff was I got my life back. I got my happiness back. I was able to powerfully take a massive failure and share it with hundreds of thousands of people. I think the podcast has over 400,000 unique downloads now. So that means a lot of people's ears have heard my stories and other people's stories. So if I can help people and share what I had to go through, then that makes me happy. So, the payoff was I was able to get out of debt. I was able to pay off $100,000 in debt in 14 months. The payoff was I was able to create an online business where I now get to travel the world. I wasn't able to travel for almost 9 years like I did in the last year. I've been to Germany, London 3 times, Paris, Spain, Portugal. Like, I think each of you listening you want a lot of freedom and you want a lot of flexibility. And there's opportunities and companies that shouldn't be going because it's just not working. So those were some of my biggest payoffs when I made a bold move and a bold decision.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm always really curious to see what people are going to say. And it's a great way to end today's episode. So thank you so much for sharing your passion, for sharing your really brilliant sales process with us. And again, I want to encourage everybody to go to Selling Without Sleeves.
Sell Without
Sleeves. Sorry, I wasn't looking at it. Sellwithoutsleeves.com and grab a resource and give Michelle a little shout out on Instagram if you're following her there, or any of the social media platforms she's on, which we will hook you up with on the show notes. Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
This is Melanie Benson, your host. Thanks so much for listening in today. If you want to catch up on any of the show notes and circle back on any of the resources we shared in today's show, head on over to the show page at amplifyyoursuccesspodcast.com. And remember, you amplify your results faster when you're in a community of other people who are moving and shaking. Join us at amplifyyoursuccesscommunity.com. One last thing. When you've gained insight from today's episode, help us share that and inspire other people by heading over to iTunes, subscribing, and give it a review. iTunes absolutely loves seeing these reviews pop up, and it actually helps boost my show's visibility. So I would be super grateful for your reviews. And as always, I love seeing your shares of these episodes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come find me over there. Tag me in your shares. I'll give you some social media love right back. So see you next week for another inspiring episode of Amplify Your Success Podcast.